Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's third and final video. We're going to have a look at whether the next 10 to 14 days for today's final video, day 10, takes us to the 30th of January, and we'll be able to extend out beyond that with today's GFS and ECM Ensembles later on around a couple of weeks. Have a look at the CFS V2 at the end of the video. The next 4 weeks gets us well into February. I shall get on that for you in a moment. Just say that first video today was our 6 a.m. upload, and we've also released European Outlook as well. Please check out those 2 videos that you'd like to about. Like, share, subscribe, and thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. Right, going to start off with the Arctic Oscillation. So this is how the AO observed and forecast is currently looking. The black line shows where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. Red lines at the end where the GFS Ensembles are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. So this is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state. It does not drive anything in its own terms. It just tells what the atmosphere is doing. When the AO is in its positive phase, we'll have low pressure over the Arctic and over the pole, and that will keep the cold air sort of bottled in over the pole a lot of the time. And when the AO is negative, though, you get high pressure, which is sort of blocking over the Arctic, and blocking is the route to getting cold air out of the pole down into the mid-latitudes. So at the moment, we can see from black line that the AO is weakly positive, and the GFS Ensembles are forecasting that the AO will stay positive right way to the beginning of February and will strengthen in positivity. In fact, we could get an exceptionally strong positive Arctic oscillation by the end of January and into the beginning of February, and that will be associated with an increase in the stratospheric polar vortex and a powering up, if you like, of the polar vortex and the zonal flow. So we've had quite a strong polar vortex, these routes in the stratosphere, because we have had a very cold stratosphere over this winter so far. We haven't really seen that strong a polar vortex, though, in the troposphere. It has been a little bit weakened, you know, compared to what you'd expect given how cold the stratosphere has been. It does look as though by the end of January, inside of February, we may well start seeing the stratosphere and the troposphere beginning to couple properly. And if that happens, we could start to generate a bit of a polar vortex of doom type scenario where we might really power up PV and start to send big areas of low pressure in across the North Atlantic into Northern Europe. Would still be a mild pattern for Northern and Western Europe, or would be a mild pattern for Northern and Western Europe. The difference would be that instead of being dry, it would be probably increasingly wet and potentially stormy. It's been an interesting winter so far. We started off with a very positive AO in early February. We went through, in early December I should say, we went through a more negative phase of the AO through the second half of December, you know, culminating in what was a cold Christmas for many northern parts of Europe, and we in the UK just missed out on a cold Christmas. You know, it's such a close run thing. But since Christmas, the AO has been generally powering up and going into like a weekly positive state, but we might see a further powering up of the Arctic oscillation as we go into the final stage of January and early February, and we might well find ourselves going into a very, very positive AO type pattern indeed, with deep low pressure and whatnot over Greenland and over the Arctic. At the same time, the NAO is looking like this. So again, this is measuring air pressures, this time in the North Atlantic rather than the Arctic. So it measures air pressure between Iceland and the Azores. When you've got a positive NAO, you've got low pressure around Iceland and high pressure around the Azores. You strengthen then, therefore, the westerly flow across the Atlantic, especially if it's combined with a positive AO. Conversely, if you're in a negative NAO, then you will weaken the high pressure around the Azores, sometimes replace it with low pressure, and you will also weaken the low pressure around Iceland and sometimes replace it with high pressure. Of course, that is a cold scenario, particularly if it's combined with a negative AO as well. So what we see at the moment is that the NAO is also in a neutral to weakly positive phase, but look at this, GFS Ensembles are forecasting that late January into February the NAO will also potentially go increasingly positive. So with both of the indexes, both the AO and the NAO going positive, it looks like we could be in for it. By the beginning of February, we might be starting to go into certainly a much more active pattern. So if you're fed up with the static weather, you know, that we've had over the past several weeks, and you want a bit of actual weather, then it's good news, because we will probably start generating morning wave low pressure. We'll start generating wet and windy weather, potentially even stormy conditions from this. But if you're waiting for some genuinely cold weather, you know, in the UK anyway, and Ireland, if you're waiting for some snow, the wait will go on, away from the Scottish mountains anyway, which can do quite well from zonality, and you can't get snow over the Scottish mountains, but like lowland southern England, if you're waiting for snow, I'm afraid the wait will go on, because all this pattern change does is sends us even milder. We lose the overnight frost that we've been getting, and we also start getting wet and windy weather coming in as well. But it does look as though there could be, you know, a change in early February. Right, CT is looking like this, still sitting at 5.3, that's 1.8 degrees above average, so a very mild January goes on. That is provisional to the 19th. I'm expecting that to come into the fours over the next few days, but we shall see. It's not really coming down all that much now, is it? These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles. We're looking at Portsmouth today, so red line is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Portsmouth. Now, having a little cold snap today, but really from today onwards, the upper air temperatures are on the way up. Of course, associated with high pressure, it will take a little while to turn things milder in the south. But generally, now we're looking at an extended mild period, milder than average period anyway, with the upper air temperatures right through to the first week of February. There's still a few cold outliers here and there, but you know, we've lost that trend a little bit towards, again, colder weather through the first week of February, to be honest. And it just generally looks more zonal, if anything, now, I think, as we go to the end of January and the beginning of February, with like cooler and warmer and cooler sectors alternating with one another. There's no sign, really, of anything particularly doing in terms of cold weather. Loads of dry weather as well over the next week to 10 days, and then into early February, perhaps getting a little bit more unsettled. You know, it's a long way off, and in this pack we might keep the high pressure going, especially so down in the south, even if the polar vortex does power up even more. And you know, we start getting low pressures developing in the North Atlantic. It's no guarantee that the Azores high won't relent for the south. So for the south, we might keep the dry weather going into early February even. It does look as though early February gets a bit more unsettled there on the south coast, but it's a very long way off, and I wouldn't really be, I wouldn't really be putting too much money on it at this stage. Let's wait and see what happens. This is how mean sea level pressure is looking. Now, this doesn't look as though it's dropping all that much, really, does it? So we're starting off at around 1,040 millibars. It does eventually, by the early February period, get down to like 1,020 millibars, but that's still pretty high. Except for a few outliers, there's not really all that much sign of low pressure on the south coast. So the Azores high is not going to give up without a fight with this. Temperatures are going to be on their way up as well into early February. By the look at it, it's a 2 metre temperature trend, and you'd expect this with like zonality getting going. So starting off pretty cool actually at the moment, but the trend is definitely going to be upwards, if this is right anyway. Trend is definitely upwards as we move to the very end of January and the beginning of February. Snow row, well, on the south coast, there's nothing doing whatsoever in the next 2 weeks in terms of snow, because high pressure is in control, and it will become an increasingly mild zonal sort of pattern. If we have a look at the extended ensembles and see how they're looking. So, I mean, we might still have that sort of idea when it goes a little bit cooler into early February, but I'm not sure about it at all, really, to be honest. It does look as though it gets more unsettled into early February, but again, I think we need to wait and see how much ground the Azores high gives. And the extended snow spikes, you know, they don't really show a great deal happening on the south coast, even into the middle of February. So this entirely snowless winter looks like it's going to continue, and it could end up like the most snowless winter that we've ever had. I wouldn't be overly surprised if it did, certainly for like southern England anyway. Temperature anomalies on the 20th, 28th of January, above average in the north. And in the south, it's going to be a little bit cooler than average just because of overnight frost. I would expect, even in the south, these temperature anomalies will warm over the next few days. So, precipitation anomalies from the 20th, 28th of January are going to be drier than normal. Latest wind from that from earth.school.net shows that high pressure continues to be sitting out to the west of Ireland. And keeping us mainly dry. The northerly wind that we had yesterday is being shoved off into Scandinavia, and we're beginning to pull in some milder or less cold air from off the Atlantic. Right, let's rattle through these charts then as quickly as we can and get this wrapped up, shall we? So we start off with UK Met, which has on Sunday high pressure dominating the weather. We go all the way through to Thursday, and that high pressure will begin to slip a little bit as some slightly less settled weather begins to start pushing in from the Atlantic with westerly winds. It will be mild though. Icon looks like that. Again, high pressure sort of dominates the weather into early part of next week, gradually giving a little bit of ground, but even to like Thursday, still quite a bit of high pressure to the south and southwest, certainly turning a bit more unsettled up in the north. The GFS midnight run, again with the high pressure well and truly in control of the weather through to the end of next week. I mean, the high pressure is still sitting there with the GFS midnight run right the way to Friday next week. Eventually, beyond day 10, the high pressure begins to give a little bit of ground for northern areas. It starts to turn more unsettled, but it's a struggle to get that high pressure away from the south. It's still there over France, for example, but gradually the GFS midnight run does turn more unsettled and actually finishes up quite stormy by the 5th of February, wet, windy, and relatively stormy by then. The 6Z, again, GFS 6Z with high pressure gradually sort of being eroded, but it takes a while, even by Friday next week. There's still quite a bit of high pressure in the south and southwest. Meanwhile, in the north, it is turning a little bit colder and more unsettled with a northwesterly. And then day 10, looking at high pressure back in again across England and Wales anyway, bringing mostly dry weather there. And even in the north, relatively high-ish pressure, and very mild with that as well. Winds in from the southwest into more extended range with the 6Z. What happens? So we never really get rid of a high pressure in the south. It just continues to sit there like a slug, but just doesn't move across Western Europe. So even by the 5th of February, relatively high pressure in the south, albeit is a bit more unsettled up in the north. But GEM, once again, shows that high pressure gradually being nibbled away at through the course of next week. But to be honest, it's a struggle. And even by day 10, is the 30th of January, the high pressure is still sort of clinging on to the south and to the southwest as well. It's a bit more unsettled up in the north. And then the ECM looks like that. So a little bit more unsettled there. Around Thursday next week, properly wet and windy for Scotland. Still relatively high pressure though down in the south, you'll notice. And by day 10, which is the 30th of January, we still have that 1,040 to 1,045 millibar area of high pressure sitting just to our south and southwest. We continue to pull in these potentially exceptionally mild west to southwesterly winds as well. So maybe a bit more unsettled for Scotland, but still not a definitive break of the high pressure up to the 30th of January. This will be precipitation forecast based on that ECM run from Meteo.com. Not much doing there, to be honest. Though it's mainly dry for the next 10 days. These are the options on the table within the ECM Ensemble state for day 10. Gets us to the 23rd of February from the Icelandic Met Office. May all involve high pressure, and it's going to be the exact placement of the high pressure that is going to be critical. These are the options, I should say. There they are. For day 10, which will be the 30th of January. So 19 members of the ECM Ensembles, again, high pressure over top of the country. I mean, that might deliver a little bit of frost and fog, will be mainly dry. 13, including the control of the operation run, the high pressure a bit further south, was low pressure to the north. So obviously that's going to be milder with winds off the Atlantic. Could be very mild actually with winds coming up from the Bahamas, but it will be a little bit more mobile for Scotland, so maybe a bit more unsettled there. 10 with high pressure just to west and southwest. Low pressure over Scandinavia, winds in from sort of a west or northwesterly direction, mainly dry there. And then 9 with high pressure, perhaps ridging towards southern Scandinavia. So that's probably the coldest option, especially for the south. Could bring in the flow from upper continent, which might deliver a little bit of frost and fog and whatnot. So, it's the exact placement of that high pressure is critical. But you will notice that by day 10, despite the powering up of the Arctic Oscillation and the stratosphere and troposphere coupling with one another in the Arctic region, despite that, the high pressure still is there, really in business and continuing to day 10. What happens in 2 weeks' time? These are the options that we've got. This gets us to the 4th of February. 17 members of the ECM ensembles then have low pressure deepening around Greenland and Iceland, and that is turning things more unsettled, particularly so in the north. The ridge is still clinging on to the south, though. 15 have the high pressure stronger, across England and Wales anyway, with low pressure way to the northwest, and in come those westerlies. 10, again, with low pressure over the country. That's going to be much more unsettled. That's a big change. That's a proper pattern change to something much more unsettled, potentially rather stormier. 5, building up a little bit of higher pressure towards Iceland, with lower pressure over Denmark sort of area, and low pressure in the Atlantic. So that's a very complicated pattern. We're probably still trying to maintain westerly flow, but could also be having a go getting the wind into the east. And then 4 have the stronger area of high pressure around Iceland, with low pressure over France and Western Europe, and we bring in wind for the east. Obviously, that's the coldest option, but only 4 are going in that direction. There does appear to be quite a significant change going on in the North Atlantic, though, from like day 10 to day 14. So let's go back to day 10. Look at all of the red that we have there through like the Northern Atlantic. At day 10, 30th of February, but by the time we, 30th of January I should say, by the time we get through to the 4th of February, a lot of that red has gone and blues have appeared, which tells us there is quite a significant change going on through early February to something much more mobile in the North Atlantic. So, but again, we still have to see the high pressure clinging on into the south, so it's whether that high pressure relents, start getting this wet and windy stuff down into the south. I would ignore these colder options. These 2 down here, I would ignore those, and I think the idea is going to be that it turns more unsettled into early February, but how unsettled it gets will be will remain to be seen. CMS finally meets the 500 millibar heights broken down to week periods. The first week period takes from 20th, 26th of January. The coming week will have high pressure over the top of the country. Into week 2, which will be the 27th of January to 2nd of February, lower pressure way to the northwest, high pressure sinking southwards and beginning to go a little bit more unsettled. That's kind of like a transitional type week, which takes us into week 3, which is the 3rd to the 9th of February, which is genuinely unsettled. It is a big change. Not a change to anything cold, but it is a big change, on what we've had since before Christmas, as we go properly wet and windy there with low pressure off the Atlantic, maybe even 1 or 2 windstorms with that kind of pattern. Heading to week 4, this is a change from yesterday. So remember the last couple of days, the CFS week 4 anomaly maps have been hinting the possibility of a Scandinavian high. That completely gone today. It's a 10th to the 16th of February, and all that happens in week 4 today is that the high pressure strengthens to the south again. Lower pressure begins to drift back in towards Greenland, Iceland, and so we're back to the pattern we're in right now, really, which is more anticyclonic. But this time very mild with that, if not warm and spring-like with wind in from the Azores and that sort of area. So the CFS flirting with a Scandinavian high in week 4, that's gone today. I don't think it's particularly surprising that that's happened. Right, that's it there at the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, please can you hit the like button. Make sure you sub to the channel. Thank you so much for doing that. Don't forget to tell your friends about GavsWeatherVids and drop a comment. Let us know what you think about this and all of our videos. Thank you so much for doing that. Just tell you what's coming up tomorrow. So we're going to have the 6 AM upload. We will also, if that wasn't enough, have GMA Friday, as well as a 10 to 14 day, and we'll probably do a live stream for you tomorrow night as well for a few minutes. So that'll be coming up tomorrow evening. You enjoy the rest of your Thursday. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.